video and audio was down a little bit there. Okay, let me try again. It is February 25th, 2026, Wednesday, hump day. Chat, if you can hear me, give me a 5x9, 5x5, thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Hope everyone is having a good evening out there. This is Southern Illinois Soil Radio Operator coming to you from an undisclosed location deep in the heart of Little Egypt. Today we're going to cover just some thoughts I had throughout the day, observing the happenings and the waiting game that everyone is playing. I'm going to try and dispel some very common and very widely held myths as well. We're going to take a little bit of a dive into the biggest news that's going to affect everyone here shortly around the world, and that is the actions of Israel and the United States and Iran and members of their trilateral security agreement, which is not reported on or mentioned very often, and that is Russia and China. So we're going to cover a few things like that tonight. I'm going to have one eye on the chat some of the time, see how long we go. If you guys are doing okay out there and having a good evening, welcome to the channel. Thanks for being here. All right, so what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for, as far as when the United States or when our friend in the region makes a move? Everyone's waiting. Are we waiting for markets to close on Friday? Are we waiting for gold to reach a certain dollar amount per ounce? Are we waiting for talks to end, to fall apart? What's the trigger that sets all this in motion? Are we waiting for a certain moon phase? Nobody, I'll just spill the beans right here for all of you. Nobody is waiting for really anything. The match, so to speak, has already started. It's a giant game to not panic populations and to get your adversary, whatever point of view you might be on, one side or the other, to behave in a certain way, telegraph certain actions, pop their head up to be seen or heard. And that's what we're all really waiting for. We're told that what we're waiting for is all of the other things. Everything that you hear and see reported in the media, much of what you see on X is simply wild speculation and continuation of a lot of myths. So we're going to try and break some of those down tonight. First one that I want to dispel, and I see it repeated very often, is that we wait for markets to close. Let's poke a few holes in that. If you believe, or are of the belief, that the United States military, or any military, waits for U.S. financial markets to close before a huge military operation is let loose, a potential weeks-long, drawn-out, likely casualty-inducing conflict, well, here's some problems with that. Here's the problems that I have with that. U.S. markets react to and are intertwined with, and this is not, I should say first, legal or financial advice. This is my unprofessional take, just my opinion, just a few strings of logic between pins. My take is there's large financial markets up and running and trading 24/7 because it's all around the globe. There's the European trading market, stock market. There's the Japanese and Asian trading markets are all open when we're sleeping. When our market is closed, they're in full tilt. And global markets, because of globalization and intertwining of economies on a global scale, none of those markets are closed. And when there's huge movements in those other markets, it boomerangs and eventually swings around the earth and affects us when our market's open. So if you have a huge multi-percentage drop in the Nikkei, whatever that is over there, it's going to come around and bash us right in the forehead when our markets wake up the next day. So I guess you could counterpoint that and say, well, there's after hours trading and insider trading and all kinds of stuff moves, they make their plays. Maybe. I just don't see it. Because they're doing that stuff anyway. They're doing the insider trading. They're moving stuff long before the news hits the regular wires, or reporters on the ground, boots on the ground, can report the same kinds of things. So that's markets. That's my take on markets. I don't believe for a minute that U.S. forces, military planners, wait for markets to close. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Here's the other thing you hear very, very often. The moon has got to be right. They want a dark moon so the enemy can't see our planes in the sky, and it helps to mask our movement so our forces can use all the technology that we bring to bear tactically, night vision, infrared, all that stuff. Well, I don't think it matters. And we had a recent example of that, a very successful late night raid during a wolf moon, and they nabbed the leader of Venezuela. A man was just, an American soldier, was just awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions that night at the State of the Union address. And that took place during a bright full moon. We even had video, if you remember, that was shared on many channels out there. Had video of American aircraft helicopters moving across the milky night sky over Caracas. Now, there's always some truth in a little bit of myth and a little bit of legend. Back in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, visibility to the human eye mattered incredibly for troop movements, ship movements, aircraft, because the technological means, the radars, the infrared sensors, the targeting pods, didn't exist yet, or they existed in very crude form. Radar certainly existed World War II into Vietnam, Korea. That was there, but it was not a pinpoint technology, a razor sharp technology. You know, it was good, but a completely dark sky, dark conditions at sea, watching for aircraft, it doesn't really matter anymore because the technology on both sides has replaced the human eye. And make no mistake, our adversary that we're going to face in the Middle East, Iran, has access to high-grade technology now because of their military agreements with China, with Russia, technology sharing with China. They are equipped where what matters has evolved past the human eye. So the phase of the moon, if you were in the Pacific or Atlantic in World War II, yeah, definitely. I remember touring ships, military ships. When I was a younger man, I have never been, nor will I claim to be in any branch of the military or a contractor or affiliated with the military in any way. But I have been aboard modern naval vessels, as well as some of the historical ones. And I remember being on the USS Cole and talking to some of the fine sailors and naval officers aboard the USS Cole. This was many years ago. And just in the course of conversation, they talked about how far you could see the cherry of a cigarette at sea. And I'd never really thought about it, because you saw it in movies and, you assumed it happened in real life, that guys would just go up on deck and on their break have a smoke. Nope. Not at sea, not even during peacetime conditions. You can see a lit cigarette for many, many, many nautical miles out on a dark ocean. And it can be enough to give your enemy an advantage and even targeting and ranging, depending on the skill level of the crew back in the time. So, but now the electronic eyes have replaced the human eyes. And while it's still smart not to tip off the human eye, a lot of that stuff doesn't really matter anymore. It's all about the technology that you can bring to bear. So that's the phase of the moon. I just don't buy it. So, going forward, looking at the phase of the moon for what's coming up in the Middle East, I think anything to do with the current moon phase is purely symbology by one party. I think they're looking at positions in the sky, events in the sky, events with the moon around that time of early March, just really a few days from now, won't be long, as highly symbolic. I think that's the only importance the moon's going to play. And there was another. Just give me a second to collect my thoughts. Trying to think about the moon. There was another myth I wanted to dispel and talk about. Oh, yeah. I remember it now. In the same vein as technology, sometimes you hear, there was recently a major, I believe, that complained about Twitter randos sharing aircraft movements and civilian or commercial grade satellite pictures of where our ships are, where naval vessels are, and then posting it on Twitter, posting it on social media. And people say, loose lips sink ships. You're giving away our military's position. Now, I don't condone very blatant examples of that being posted. But at the same time, OPSEC in that manner for any force around the world has long been compromised by satellite technology and the ever steady improving pace of imagery and geospatial intelligence by the Chinese and by the Russians, and now shared with the Iranians. So while you shouldn't go out of your way to share knowledge of troop strength, positions, certainly not future planning if you're a military family, you know someone in the military, they let something slip to you. No, don't share that on Twitter. But in the same vein, thanks to the Chinese, I guarantee you, the Iranians know exactly where everything is sitting. They're not surprised by what ship is where, how many and what type of aircraft is sitting at an open airfield in Jordan or Bahrain. The Chinese has allowed them access to that geospatial intelligence. They know where stuff's at. We're not going to surprise them that way. So what does that bring us down to on the chessboard? Because that's what we're doing. We're playing a game of chess, and that's using the language of strategy. Of course, there is lives involved in what's going to take place. Many lives are involved, and many lives are threatened on both sides. But what's going on now, what you read about in the news, what you see on social media, what's being reported, things like the plumbing is not working on the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. That, what's some other pieces? Pieces and positions is what it's at. We've got the talks coming up in Geneva, I think it is, tomorrow, maybe in just a few hours, between the Iranian government and U.S. representatives. A lot will come out of that. But what's going on now with these stories that you hear is all about shaking the trees. When you see stories that make it look like certain elements of the United States military are not quite put together, or you read stories about such and such Iranian air base is on alert, or their ground forces are put on alert, or troops were evacuated from this base, that base, what we're doing, because of the phase of the conflict that we're in, which is still phase 0, which is shaping the battle space, shaping the operating area, we're just watching where heads poke up. When something is released to the media or actual flights take place or movements of ships closer to a certain area or further away from a certain area, all we're doing, as far as U.S. military is concerned, is collecting intelligence. And the Iranians are doing it too. Recently, it was announced, and from what I can tell, it's true, that U.S. Navy ships that were previously docked at a base in Bahrain, I think it was, have went out to sea, out into the open ocean, where they're less of a target. That could be tree shaking, and that's just good practice when you start getting close to kinetic activity. But just the fact that that happened, it really happened, the ships moved out, caused a whole wave of events and movement and communication and collaboration, transmissions, electronic signatures, to happen on the Iranian side. And that is all part of a huge operation, which is maintaining and developing the intelligence picture. The U.S. military is doing it. Iran just had concluded or is continuing, I think both is accurate to say, some localized naval maneuvers, some missile firings, and they're watching us as well. They're looking to see what pops up on our side. And the other interested, very, very interested party, just as much as Iran, because it's going to be for their survival to determine this, is China. We are not so much as moving a ship at sea without China knowing about it. They're watching because the future for them is highly dependent on what they learn when we do what we're going to do with our friend in the region to Iran. They can't wait. They are chomping at the bit. They are going to learn so much about our military technology. It won't be funny. And they're there, waiting, watching, and partnered with the adversary to do just that. Speaking of pawns, I wanted to tell you about a story that just dropped today, and we'll cover a little bit more military meat here in a little bit. But speaking of pawns, check out this dirtbag. From the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Public Affairs, press release today, Wednesday, February 25th, 2026. Former U.S. Air Force pilot arrested for providing defense services to the Chinese military. Story's right there if you want to read it. Was a major. Just turned a senior citizen. arrested in Jeffersonville, Indiana. So right here in the Midwest. Brown was charged with a criminal complaint for providing and conspiring to provide defense services to Chinese military pilots without authorization in violation of the Arms Export Control Act. Initial appearance before a judge, Southern District of Indiana, February 26th. Tomorrow, so they're moving that along. Says here he was a former F-35 Lightning II instructor pilot with decades of experience flying U.S. military aircraft. Allegedly, because you are innocent until proven guilty. I'm just reading the story. I want you to know. But if these allegations are true, this poor man is a pawn. This misguided, I won't use the T word yet because he hasn't been convicted, but he was turned. Very sad for him and for our country. Very sad. But that's what's coming. These little moves on the chessboard are not by mistake. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It might be for the person they're looking to flip, but make no doubt about it. Make no mistake about it. Have no doubt about it. The Chinese are working aggressively to figure out our capabilities, and have been for some time. And you will see stories like these peppered all throughout the media over the last few years, several years, and you will see more and more of these. I guarantee you, you will see more and more stories like this as time marches on to that fateful day when we're going to have to face off. And I hope very much that that day can be avoided and a different timeline can be put in motion. Because that's going to be a bad day for all sides. Not looking forward to that whatsoever. So let's take a look at the current picture. What's going on over there? Let's start a little closer to our European friends. This graphic was put together by Schizo-Intel, who I have to thank gave me gracious permission to use his graphics in my live streams. So check him out on X. He puts out many, many good posts, many solid takes, and good intel, and good graphics like this. It's a talent that I don't quite have, so he's been gracious enough to allow me to lean on his talent. And he can spit these out in no time. I don't know how he does it, but it's at Schizo-Intel on X is his handle. He's working on a good channel. He's got a lot of good takes. But here's the naval picture on what we're looking like, how we're sizing up in the Med. This is for the 24th February, 2026. And as you can see on your screen, the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group 12, is currently in Crete. So a little ways away on the outskirts of typically a Mid-East operating area. We also have quite a few of our vessels in Spain, in the Rota area, where the Rota Air Base, that southern tip of Spain down here. Also in the Western Med, got several of these ships. And much closer to the Middle East currently, as you can see, the Roosevelt and the Buckley. And we're not alone. Around Egypt, north of, I'd say it's pretty close to, centered on like Port Said in Egypt is roughly around here. I've been there. Got quite a few Russians hanging out. Submarines. So a lot of these ships, if we were to dive deep into these different ships, they would be called research and oceanography ships and things like that. Some of these profiles, but they've also got a military ISR picture available to them. And I'm not going to dive too deep in some of these, but you just need to know that these two parties, the U.S. Navy and other nations, are mixing in closer and closer proximity as time goes on. And they're watching each other, learning from each other, signals intelligence, watching positions, confirming positions, things like that. Current picture for the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, Gulf of Oman, Persian Gulf, 24th February. Also, this graphic is by Schizo-Intel. You can see the pressure is, and has been over the last several weeks, high. That's a lot of hardware. That's a lot of our naval hardware, to put it simply. Staged. But this hardware, both American, Russian, Iranian, and Chinese, all mixing together, components of those forces are all playing a chess game. A very dangerous chess game, but it's a chess game nonetheless. And it's a ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance game. On the diplomatic side, the talks back and forth, who proposed what, who declined to accept, back and forth, meet here, meet there, diplomats globetrotting, having high-profile meetings. Both sides are just biding time, because the real important groundwork that's going to be laid for no matter what side you're on are being done by elements and units that are on these ships, on these bases in the Mideast, and whether that's aircraft, human intelligence, time for repeated geospatial and imagery intelligence from satellites overhead, aircraft pictures. I'm sure there's probably been several overflights of U-2 in the region, of the U-2s, just for plain imagery, just to help knock out that cycle of when the Chinese and the Iranians understand when our satellite footprint is overhead to gather imagery data. When they want to move something big, they still have to do so under the risk that aerial surveillance, in some cases very high altitude aerial surveillance, can pop in at any time. And this is just churning. We're building and building. I won't bring it up because there's really not a whole lot of good graphs, but I spent the other night revisiting the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's J-2.01. It's the most current edition I could get on, but it's basically the Joint Staff Intelligence booklet for their doctrine. I reread that, 200 some pages. I skimmed a couple parts, but it reinforced why the Abe Lincoln got there so early. The units on the Abe Lincoln are critical for signals intelligence, not just during combat time, but also in the shaping phase where we're at now, phase 0. There's elements aboard these craft, these naval vessels, that are both offensive, defensive, and constantly running a network to serve the intelligence community that is very busy right now, analyzing everything that's going on, because we're playing whack-a-mole with different forces in the region. They're doing it to us, we're doing it to them, and that's all we're waiting on, crew. That's it. It's real simple. It's just sweating it out. Personally, I made a video, I think it was a video, not a live stream. I made a video earlier in the week where I made the claim, the prediction, that around the 3rd of March, plus or minus 48 hours, this would go hot. And I don't think I stressed in that video enough that it wasn't the American side, at least in my estimation, that wants this to go hot. I think our friend in the region, ISR, I think their patience will run out over Purim, because they see this as one of the last opportunities they have as a very good time, the metal's hot, to strike. In their estimation, they likely feel, or have determined, not feel is a poor word to use with intelligence matters, they've likely determined a large-scale, devastating air campaign is going to topple that current regime. After a very large human intelligence and psychological campaign that they enabled, that has killed and maimed and destroyed the lives of a great many Persians. There was a story recently that you may have seen. It was probably buried down pretty deep. I think it was just a flash in the pan, Tuesday maybe, international news, that I believe it was the Dutch government was upset that the Iranians had confiscated some diplomatic luggage or bags or pouches or something or other that was under Dutch diplomatic protection, the rules of international diplomacy. And it was released that what was in those pouches or in those bags or containers or whatever they were Starlink terminals, modems. Quite a few Starlink modems. So you can kind of read into that what you want, but it paints the picture that Western diplomats were bringing basically telecommunications equipment into the country. And the Iranians have decided to start cracking down and being more proactive in keeping that equipment out of their country. So you can go back and find that. Any of these news stories. I see so many and I try to cover so much. Unfortunately, I don't have a good practice of through the day, like writing down very detailed notes. I kind of just stick it in the back of my mind and let it sit there in an old beat up manila file folder for later use. And sometimes I don't have exactly the specifics, as far as exact dates, exact names, things like that. But usually I have the general overview in the back of my mind. So there again, trust but verify even my voice, even my mind. I can get stuff wrong. So to sum it up, we're just shaking the trees, both sides, learning what we can, wasting time, biding time, and I'm not going to use the word imminent, but we're getting very, very close. One thing I didn't share, because I haven't found a good partner yet that can make that has a graphic, is just the amount of air power, which you've heard that in the news too. It's one of the greatest buildup of American air power in the Middle East since the Gulf War. Or you might just hear it said as the greatest buildup since the Gulf War. Well, aircraft and naval vessels, yes. One main clue that everyone, I think, has got now is that there's no troop presence like the Gulf War was in the 90s. So what is the obvious indicator that this is going to be a air campaign, a very large, destructive air campaign, and naval bombardment, Tomahawk missiles, things of that nature. Which is good, because there's a very old saying, which is debated in military colleges, I know, because there's present day examples where it doesn't really fit, but the old rule of thumb was you never attack a castle with a boat. It's just a bad idea. You just can't loiter long enough. And speaking of loitering, there's another Air Force saying, there's no kicking ass without tanker gas. The amount of jet fuel, American jet fuel, and tankers, but just the gallons and gallons of jet fuel that the American military is about to go through in the coming months is going to be insane, because that's all we're going to be able to do is sorties. And it's going to come down to driving through that country in waves upon waves upon waves of American military aircraft to grind down ground installations, radar sites, airfields, missile sites, headquarters, command posts, personnel areas. It's going to be one of the most, if it lets loose, it's going to be one of the most intense series of bombings and offensive aircraft action that the world has ever seen. The unfortunate part is, because of what's there on the Iranian side, it will not be without incredible risk to U.S. pilots, Air Force, and naval aviators. And I don't think it's going to be bloodless on our side. The threat that's there is extreme. And I understand the need for optimistic patriotism, but you have to be careful that you're not so patriotic. Nothing wrong with being patriotic, but you have to be careful that you're not so patriotic you are blind to the dangers. That you're not so prideful that you cheerlead while your team is getting slaughtered. And I'm not saying there's going to be a slaughter of American pilots or forces, but we're used to, as a population, as a society, American society, we are used to winning every battle. And this is a very difficult thing to put into words, because with the Great War on Terror, we're technologically superior. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, there was no peer to our military force. We won really every battle, had air superiority throughout entire campaigns, especially Afghanistan. But we lost the war. Strategically, it's probably the first time in history a military force has won every battle, but strategically, at the end, what you have in your hand to show for it, we lost the war. The Taliban is back in power in Afghanistan. And we have a great many number of veterans that are having a very difficult time understanding that, wrapping their heads around that. And even though I've never served in the military, my heart breaks for them. Because there's no words for that. There's no words for their sacrifice. Nothing that I could say or even conjure up to say to bring them any comfort over that fact. But this case is different. And we've had the very recent, overwhelming victory, or not victory yet, but major objective completed just to our south with the Operation Southern Spear and the what appeared to be the easy collection of Maduro. Overwhelming military force and tactics and technology. We straight up embarrassed any opposition that might have been there. And there was still risk, there was still injury, as was seen at the State of the Union address with the young pilot that was awarded the Medal of Honor. He was wounded, but he kept going. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing feat. I was happy to see that award come out. It's too many of our heroes, I think, just my humble opinion, too many of our heroes in the past were awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously, if I'm spitting that word out correctly, after they passed, whether from just time or, because of their actions of valor and heroism and bravery. There's not enough, in my opinion, for what is probably going on on the ground in the last 20, 25 years in the military. I don't think we have enough Medal of Honor winners. Probably should have been a lot more, but that's a proud group and a duty-bound group, and many of them would just say they were doing their duty, they were doing their job, they were looking out for the man next to them, just trying to do their job and go home. They deserve to be recognized that the word just didn't get passed up the chain, just part of the job that day. And put that in contrast to the press release today for the former instructor working with the Chinese. So, with such a heavy-handed operation, or such a lopsided, easy victory in that operation in Venezuela, I wanted to remind everyone, as far as looking at potential timing in this region, which I'm not sure you will see the same carried out here in the Middle East, but it's possible, and it's a possible indicator to look for. If you remember, the weeks previous to going in during a full moon and snatching Maduro, we watched as the OSINT community reported on repeated flights of American aircraft just to the north of the Venezuelan coast, back and forth, and doing racetracks in the sky, all different kinds of aircraft, but mostly the ones that everybody was watching for were the Growlers from the Ford. That particular aircraft, those weapons officers and signals intelligence officers in the ISR airframes, in the Growlers, in the E3s that were flying constantly, they were simply sponges, electronic ISR sponges. And what they were trying to determine as they made their flights, the repeated flights, was the same thing that's going on right now, but I don't think it's broadcasted by the OSINT community because you can't see it on ADS-B. The aircraft are either the transponders are off, which they should be, or they're too far out of the terrestrial-based ADS-B receivers to be picked up. Either way, I guarantee you that the units, the squadrons aboard the Abraham Lincoln have been doing this since it got there. Running those flights, this time on the southern coast of Iran, and soaking up all the signals intelligence they can, reading the waveform data, and trying to figure out the lock that is the electronic eye that's going to be watching. The Chinese and Russian radar systems that now are a completely different picture as far as operationally than what they were in Venezuela. The intelligence reports came back that up to 80% of the early warning radars were not operational for various factors. During the sequence of events, the time frame that we conducted the raid, to yank Maduro like a old-time Looney Tunes character in the back of his shirt out of a hole, 80% of the radars were either offline, in disrepair, standing alone, meaning not networked, which is very critical for what I'm going to tell you here in a little bit. Didn't have parts, didn't have trained crews, didn't have disciplined crews manning them, so it was a mess. So not only, and I've mentioned this before, I don't think on any of my lives, but maybe in other channels where I've spoken, not only when we went in there so easily and electronically defeated what was on and flew through air defenses like they didn't even exist, because they basically didn't, we embarrassed not only the Venezuelan military, but we embarrassed the Chinese. Not to say that we have to worry one way or another if we embarrass the Chinese military, but they were embarrassed for themselves. They were embarrassed for themselves because there was some media coverage about Chinese technology, and to a lesser extent, the Russian technology that was supposed to be in Venezuela protecting their coast from American aggression. And it just plain didn't work. It was a wet paper bag, and wild weasels off the Ford punched through it like it was a greasy, wet paper bag. Knocked it right out. It was barely a factor. That level of embarrassment. But if you know anything about Eastern attitudes and the concept of shame, it is an intense motivator for those that have brought shame upon themselves to prove themselves worthy again in the future. And you don't get a whole lot of opportunities on a military scale to do that without really endangering your own nation. So what's happening now in Iran with the Chinese is they are currently linking radars, layering radars, and ensuring that their equipment is dialed in against American and Israeli technology on our warplanes. They have learned from the shame that they suffered in Venezuela, and they're going to set up air defense in Iran properly. They're going to do it properly this time. No foul-ups. And by layered air defense, I mean different frequency wavelengths. One of them is a Chinese radar system that is a known, admitted by engineers and designers of the F-35 and the F-22, that it has a vulnerability. These aircraft have a vulnerability to meter wave radars. It can be overcome with electronic warfare. And that's our strategy, as the American strategy is just fly high and electronically overwhelm and disrupt and destroy, target and destroy enemy radars. The Chinese know that, because that's been our doctrine since the Gulf War. The British did it one way with tornadoes back in the day, going into Iraq. They tried to fly under the radar, low and fast, and they lost quite a few planes. But they had very little electronic warfare elements on those tornadoes. The Americans came in and they flew high and loud and proud and just jammed the ever-living shit out of every radar on the ground that the Iraqis had, and punched through like a hot knife through butter. Destroyed all kinds of stuff. You know, there was some close calls with some SAMs and stuff like that. There's some stories out there, but for the most part, the overwhelming electronic warfare technique ruled the day. Won the day, won the war. At least the air war, air to ground, SAM war. And that remains doctrine to this day. And with that much time on the same kind of doctrine, adjusting the dials, adjusting the knobs for this wavelength, overcoming that wavelength, there's only so much you can play with that. And the Chinese have learned, and I'm going to have to take a break here in just a little bit, but I'll check the chat when I get back. If you want to go over it, I got time. It's a little bit after 9:30 Central Time here. We can go over some of these systems if you want. But the Chinese have learned to layer and separate and network radar systems to the actual surface-to-air missile launchers, and to do it in phasing to where when an American Growler, an E-18 Growler, a wild weasel, is trying to pave the way through to make way for another strike package, and they're trying to target these radar sites and SAMs, which there are many in Iraq, or in Iran, sorry. Some we're not even aware of, and we won't catch them because they are deployable, meaning they're under the ground, they're hidden, our satellites aren't picking them up. We have only a few avenues of making the intelligence picture to actually locate these geospatially. What they'll do is they'll set these SAM sites up with a networked, layered radar system to where when that Growler comes in and fires an anti-radar missile, harm, to take out a singular radar. As soon as they let weapons go hot, that radar shuts down, and another one of a completely different type, a mile and a half away or 2 miles away, takes over where that one left off, and that one goes dark, and it's still networked to a SAM site that is using these radars to track these aircraft, and that million-dollar missile explodes on the ground, maybe nearby what it was originally tracking, but otherwise harmlessly. And as the aircraft pass over the SAM site pops up out of the dirt, out of the side of a mountain somewhere. Another radar takes over. It launches its surface-to-air missile toward the back end of our boys. And if you've been following the picture I'm painting, you can see how ugly and messy this can get. Because it's a real possibility, and it's admitted to, but it's not talked about. Because you can't cheerlead off of that. You can change your tactics, and you can be careful, and you can adjust your objectives off of that, but you can't cheerlead off of that knowledge. And this channel, and why I'm telling you this, is not to bring you down, but because you need to know that you have to be able to see through. We have our own propaganda. You need to be realistic with your expectations on what's going to happen if this all lets loose. Do I hope we win? Of course. I'm a patriot like many of you. I don't want harm to come to my nation, to our military forces. But we need to be real with the challenge we face. Because if you can't set realistic objectives, you're just guessing, just hoping. And that's a very dangerous way to run an air campaign, in my humble opinion. My humble, unprofessional opinion. I'll be back in a bit. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to read over the chat and see what you guys want to talk about. Give me just a few minutes.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. First, I should like to express my gratitude to the radio and television networks for the opportunities they have given me over the years to bring reports and messages to our nation. My special thanks go to them for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. 3 days from now, after half a century in the service of our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office as, in traditional and solemn ceremony, the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. Like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who will labor with him Godspeed. I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on issues of great moment, the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of the nation. My own relations with the Congress, which began on a remote and tenuous basis when, long ago, a member of the Senate appointed me to West Point, have since ranged to the intimate during the war and immediate post-war period, and finally to the mutually interdependent during these past 8 years. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. It is the task of statesmanship to mold, to balance, and to integrate these and other forces, new and old, within the principles of our democratic system, ever aiming toward the supreme goals of our free society. Another factor in maintaining balance involves the element of time. As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow. During the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. Such a confederation must be one of equals. The weakest must come to the conference table with the same confidence as do we, protected as we are by our moral, economic, and military strength. That table, though scarred by many past frustrations, cannot be abandoned for the certainty agony of disarmament of the battlefield. Disarmament with mutual honor and confidence is a continuing imperative. Together we must learn how to compose differences, not with arms, but with intellect and decent purpose. Because this need is so sharp and apparent, I confess that I lay down my official responsibilities in this field with a definite sense of disappointment. As one who has witnessed the horror and the lingering sadness of war, as one who knows that another war could utterly destroy this civilization, which has been so slowly and painfully built over thousands of years, I wish I could say tonight that a lasting peace is in sight. Happily, I can say that war has been avoided. Steady progress toward our ultimate goal has been made, but so much remains to be done. As a private citizen, I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road. So in this, my last good night to you as your president, I thank you for the many opportunities you have given me for public service in war and in peace. I trust in that service, you find some things worthy. As for the rest of it, I know you will find ways to improve performance in the future. You and I, my fellow citizens, need to be strong in our faith that all nations under God will reach the goal of peace with justice. May we be ever unswerving in devotion to principle, confident but humble with power, diligent in pursuit of the nation's great goals. To all the peoples of the world, I once more give expression to America's prayerful and continuing aspiration. We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth, and that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. Now, on Friday noon, I am to become a private citizen. I am proud to do so. I look forward to it. Thank you, and good night.
That was the farewell address of President Eisenhower. Sometimes I wonder how he would look upon our society today. I think, unfortunately, he would be disappointed in a great many things. I think he would be marveled at the technology we have today. But I don't think he would be too happy with where a lot of things in the government realm ended up only a few generations after his term, after his lifetime of public service. But that's neither here nor there. It's the path that we're on currently. So, but I've been thinking about his speech over the last several days quite a bit, and how much our society's changed since his time. In some ways, it's changed for the better. And in some ways, it hasn't. In some ways, it's gone quite a bit worse. But just a note of reflection. So how are you guys doing tonight? Hopefully what I've presented so far has offered you an opportunity to think maybe differently about how you are seeing things out there, how your perception is of the media, social media, a lot of the unfounded slop that gets just thrown out there. As far as the things that I see, one of the things that I marvel at is just the amount of vague posting, like on Twitter, on X, just sheer amount of geopolitical and political intrigue and vague posting. Blows my mind. But it gets engaged, otherwise they wouldn't do it. You know, it'll get a big accounts will vague post some slop, and it'll get hundreds of replies. Even if 100 or 250 or 1,000 replies is, "What are you doing? This is crap." The algorithm just keeps it moving along. I don't know what to think about that. Well, for some reason, I'm getting a poor health message, but poor stream health, which is very possible given my remote location. But I'm looking at the chat now, and let's see if I can... Anybody want to pick apart what I've presented so far? Tell me I'm way wrong. You don't have to fanboy or fangirl for any of my takes. You can lay it all out there and tell me I'm... Soil, you just got it all wrong, buddy. You don't know what you're talking about. Which, I would tell you, this is a unprofessional stream. Do not try these opinions on at home, at your dinner table. Your boomer uncle may become unhinged and lay you out. Good to see many of you in here. Soul Over Simulation at the #1 spot in the charts, it looks like. You've been busy in chat, buddy. Thanks for being here. Can you guys still hear and see me okay? Yes, Jay. It is about money. A lot of money changing hands. Well, the YouTube server says I now have an excellent connection, so hopefully you guys can hear me all right. All right, let's see. Take the first one, and I'm sorry if I make all kinds of crazy sounds in the mic. I'm still cutting my teeth in broadcast journalism. No, I'm kidding. I'm not a broadcast journalist. Don't tell anybody that. You'll get all kinds of people upset. Excellent. Thank you, Armament. Let's see. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Soul Over Simulation, for the thumbs up. Thank you, Claudette. Yep, this is my brand new baby channel that I'm just experimenting with. You know, I'm not trying to take over the world or set the world on fire with my political takes or with my YouTube channel or have a bunch of stuff to sell you. I don't really plan on any of that. The channel's still bonking its head a lot, and most of that is because of my internet network provider. I'm in a very remote, rural location, and so my choices for affordable internet are somewhat limited. But Amy Moss, we need a new news channel. No, you don't. You got 10,000 of them. You can't swing a dead cat on YouTube or X or half a dozen other social spaces without running into somebody that wants to tell you the news. I'm probably the last thing everybody needs. But I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to be true to myself, and I'm going to tell you how I see the world in my humble opinion. And it's my hope that many of you disagree with me and challenge me over time and help me to learn and grow, and I hope I can do the same for you. Because that's what it's about, constantly learning, growing, not being caught in a bubble. Because if you get caught in a bubble for too long, you end up just getting fat and happy and sniffing your own flatulence because it's got nowhere else to go. The other thing I tell people with this channel, no, Ridge Runner, you didn't miss it. And there was probably a whole long segment of my initial monologue in the beginning of the live that you missed. So that's up to you if you want to go back and listen to that in its entirety. But, I can't make any claim to a point of authority for you, and I wouldn't try. It's just my take on how I see things and my interests, and I'm sharing that with you. And I refer to myself at times as equal parts, court jester, armchair general, rodeo clown, so on and so forth. And if you think about it, the way I think about it, would you rather be back in the old medieval days in some king's court? Would you rather be the knight in shining armor with the broadsword and all that? Or would you rather be the jester? Selfish reason, and I'll tell you why, I would rather be the jester. The knight has to fight for the king, which is honorable. But his role is very limited. He has to be intelligent in battle. He has to be somewhat intelligent on the floor of the court so he doesn't step in it and get himself in trouble. That kind of thing. He is an advisor to the king. Yeah, he probably gets the maidens, which would be a perk, but he's also got to go out on that battlefield. Selfishly, if you're the jester, you're still an advisor to the king, maybe in different matters, but you still have his ear. You don't have to go out in the mud and the muck and the blood and the guts. You could probably sneak up on a maiden, if you play your cards just right. I hear from my experience, women like to laugh, and they like guys that can make them laugh. So yeah, I'd rather be the jester. if I was going to be purely selfish and ignoble. It's more fun being the jester because you can insult the king. You can tell the king off and just say it's a joke. And hopefully you got a good king that doesn't just splat you right there. But, you can still advise the king. You're hanging out with the maidens while everyone else is running 18 feet of wooden pole through someone's torso, or vice versa. Yeah. So it's more fun that way. It's best to not... I'm not going to take myself too serious. I'll have serious presentations and present serious information, but I'm not going to tell you, I'm an expert, decades of experience in such and such military organization or think tank. Nope. No, I've just been alive for a while. I have a certain thought process about information, and I try to have an open mind how I view the world. And I like speaking about it and talking about it with other people. That's all. So, Jay Jonason, if I said your name right, my thoughts for Iran, if you got to have the timeline, if you got to have the down low, yes. As I said earlier in the monologue, I think Israeli patience will run out on the 3rd. Most likely plus 48 hours. It could be minus, but my gut and my brain both tell me something's going to happen to light that region on fire. After Purim, after the Jewish Purim holiday, which is symbolically celebrated. It's kind of like, from what I understand, if I got the gist of it right, it's kind of like their Halloween in a way. They like to dress up, and there's costumes and things like that. And it's definitely a social affair more than a family affair, if I have that right. But it's celebrated by the Jewish people to remind them of an escape or a release or a freedom from an ancient Persian despotic genocidal king. And I think along with other signs in the heavens that are occurring, because don't discount that toward a population will assign signs in the heavens. They'll assign great importance to that symbology. And it really doesn't matter if you're what religious stripe you are. Signs in the heavens affects it's a base suspicion layer, I think, that's built into a lot of humans. So there's going to be a full lunar blood moon, I believe blood moon, on top of all that, lunar eclipse that's going to be visible from the western part of North America across the Asia Pacific and into the leading edge of the Middle East. So you got that going on. Purim. There's currently, here the last week of February, there's a very obvious train of planets visible in the northern hemisphere. I don't remember exactly which planets they are, but it's a significant event. And I think that all those different flavors is going to back up to have just enough psychological effect, as if fighting and bragging about conducting an 8-front war isn't enough of a psychological pressure for the Israelis themselves. They're openly, and I could probably find the speech, but Bibi, old Biebs, is openly bragging about conducting maybe a 7-front war, or maybe I've got the 7-8 mixed up, but soon to be, if it's 7 now, it's soon to be 8. And if they're lucky, they'll finish 2 or 3 before the next one. I can get some Windex here on my crystal ball, but looking forward to the future, how can I phrase this without stepping in it and getting myself in too much trouble? If I were the nation of Turkey, whatever we're calling them now, if I were Turkey, I would be looking at what's about to go down in Iran and think to myself that my time is limited before I have an open confrontation with the Israelis. Because Iran's been on the menu for a long time. They're just trying to figure out how to crack that nut and get everything in the right spot, politically, diplomatically, or at least the cover of politically and diplomatically, and then also militarily. You got to have the right president, you got to have the right U.S. president, you got to have the right amount of a weakened U.S. Congress. You got to have all those things in your favor before you can go out and do something like that if you are ISR, the nation of ISR. Prepper 1, chat is open and unmoderated, so the only thing that is blocking comments would be the YouTube algorithm itself. That's the only entity that's blocking anything. So unless you're talking about other people maybe blocking what you're saying or blocking you, I don't know. But this is an open. Okay. Yeah, that's very possible. That's the only entity that is moderating the chat right now. I don't have any moderators. I am infamous or famous for, at least on this channel, it's going to be widely known. Well, I'm getting way too far out in front of the bow here. I'm not going to moderate my chat because I want people to be able to fully, as long as they're not over the top, nasty, completely disrespectful, but respectfully and civilly. Actually, I'll put it up. I was working on it earlier today. I want people to be able to have a free expression of ideas and not be afraid to say what they are thinking, and how they think about things. So it will be, as best as I can create on this platform anyway, a free speech First Amendment zone. A First Amendment cage, like what you see set up for the rabble-rousers and peasants to yell and scream at the global elite as they trot into a really nice building 8 blocks away, and they smile and give you a thumbs up because they can't even hear you. They can barely see you all the way down the block between all the lines of police. That's your First Amendment zone out there where they put the opinion yellers. And they give you a thumbs up because they don't know if you're a supporter or you're a mob that's going to set them upon the guillotine because you're so far away in the First Amendment zone. That's not how I want the chat to be. I want the chat to be open so you guys can discuss things freely and openly. And if YouTube censors it, that's above my pay grade as far as managing the channel. But you guys are in the Wild West in the chat box, as far as I'm concerned. Speak to each other, debate each other. Yes, a chat mosh pit. The only time I'll get involved in the chat mosh pit is if there's just an overwhelming amount of, jerks or something in there that's just cursing at people, or personal attacks, which are brainless. But what was I going to do? See, you drug me out into the weeds. You drug me into the mosh pit, crew. Which, in the future, on lives, you will notice that I am very oft to allow you to do, is to drag me off in the weeds, some detail of some topic, and have your way with me. That is a weakness I have. So, I'm sure you will exploit it. But I was working on this slide some time ago. Yeah, Rich, you'll behave, I bet. But yeah, the only way I'll get involved in the chat room mosh pit is if someone's just blatantly being ridiculous and not being civil and respectful. So chat culture slide that I was working on here to remind everyone, and sometimes I'll probably just open up lives if I have the bandwidth available. I'll just open up the live, cover a quick topic, and let you guys talk for an hour or two or whatever, and then shut it down. And, I'll hop in where I can and things like that. But overall, you can see it on your screen, but I'll read it in case anyone's just like listening with earbuds or something on a live. But in the chat, have an open mind and articulate your thoughts civilly. That means pretend like the person you're speaking to is sitting next to you, because that definitely changes the dynamic. In the virtual space, you can be as nasty as you want, and no one's going to pop you in the mouth. But in person, and you have a lot more context too, which it's not really a fair comparison, because you can read body language and how the person's taking what you're saying, and they can read your body language and all that good stuff. But I don't think the designers of the virtual spaces in the interwebs like chat. I don't know if they sat down and were like, humans are social creatures, and they're going to be missing all kinds of signs that we take for granted, like facial expressions and body language and tone of voice and context, of what you're talking about. I don't think they realized how nasty it was just going to say. It was just going to turn out to be. The green writing on a white background, just saying. You can have your say, but no. No, it's going to be green on a black background with a picture of the Constitution, or a picture of our founding document up in the corner. So if you can't read that, I'm going to read it for you. So yeah, have an open mind, articulate your thoughts civilly. In the chat, use the @ and your username. That's kind of a personal pet peeve of mine, and I see it when I've moderated for other channels. It causes a great deal of confusion between people trying to have a conversation, is you don't copy and paste, or you don't bother to type it all out, and before you know it, you're misspelling names, and you're having a somewhat passionate debate with another chat member, and someone completely off your radar picks up what you're putting down because you've misspelled or not used a chat name. You've just thrown something out there, and it just it's just all in the blender, and it's all lost. It's all snafu'd in 20 messages. No, Ridge, we don't do strikes here. Goodness gracious. I advocate in other channels that I mod for, I advocate for people not to block each other. Good golly, that's the worst thing you can do for your mind, is to surrender and leave a space that you feel uncomfortable in. Because all you're doing is weakening your mind. If you're I'll cover this in a hint so I don't get too far out over the bow. But yeah, use an @ and then the username so it highlights in the chat box the person you're trying to talk to. That will help. That will help you all tremendously. So who you're all talking to knows you're talking to that person. Number 3, don't clog the chat by soapboxing or street preaching or excessive emojis. Because there's nothing worse than you're trying to have a conversation with someone in chat or multiple people in chat. And I know it's a fun thing to do and all that, but for me, for my channel, I would hope we would all be adults and really not find a reason to put 8,000 cupcakes or smiley faces or whatever in a giant block that takes up the whole chat. Just my personal preference to not do that and just have a dialogue. You know, if you want to play with, 1998 MS-DOS print shop characters, do that on an offline screen at home. Just talk to each other. Smiley faces, heart stuff. I mean, 1 or 2 is no big deal, but don't fill up the chat with a bunch of stuff. And by soapboxing, I mean like how they filibuster in Congress, where they read from the phone book. Articulate your thoughts to make your argument, and by argument I don't mean the classic current American society idea of arguing. I mean debating. I mean talking amongst each other and giving each other reasons for or against that type of argument. Because you can argue with someone and debate someone, it doesn't mean that they're your enemy and that you should hate them and a curse be upon their house. You can have a disagreement with somebody and try and find common ground. Try to define things and find common ground is always the basis of every debate or argument. So don't get in the chat and soapbox by just putting your point over and over with more and more exclamation points, all that kind of stuff. No, it's not a speech to say you're stepping in it. I'm actually not really even paying much attention to the chat right now. I'm trying to get through this explanation of chat culture because my channel is new, and a lot of you here, if you like it, I hope you'll stick around and you'll help guide others. And eventually I'll put this up in lives again, especially when I cover like a really divisive topic or something like that. And yeah, am I still alive here? Or am I just talking to the wind? Shows I'm still alive. And street preaching. There's no reason, there's no need to put entire layers or entire paragraphs of religious texts. I know many of you are Christian. I hope in the future we have all different kinds of religions represented here in the chat and among members. And if it's relevant to a current topic and you're having a debate with someone and you want to reference a piece of religious text as a way to back up your claim, I personally wouldn't use any religious passages because in normal discourse, and this is very important, and it's not said to offend any religion, but in normal discourse, when you're trying to make a logical, rational point to someone, one of the logical fallacies is an appeal to authority. I'll say that again. One of the logical fallacies that you can make during a debate or an argument is to make an appeal to authority. because it spins off into the subjective, into the abstract. When it comes to discussions about right here, right now, humans on Earth trying to coexist with one another, hammering stuff out. So I wouldn't post that. You can source it. I just wouldn't waste your time by typing out a whole stanza from a religious text or a whole large chunk of verse, and it doesn't matter what religion it's from. If you abuse this, it's the same as soapboxing to me. And if I catch it, I'll delete it. And it doesn't matter what religion it's from, because you're not going to get anywhere with anyone by making a logical mistake. We want a true, your own thoughts. And that's the other thing too. It's lazy thinking. And this is not said to offend anyone of a religious nature, but when you cut and paste an example of morality or what you might think would be future, prophecy, things of that nature, it's not your own thoughts when you pull from a religious text anymore. It is from that text. It's not your own thinking. So formulate your own thoughts. So soapboxing and street preaching are kind of one of the same. It's really trying to force you guys to not use filler or crutch, or a crutch in your times, in your discussions. So, but hint, or number 4, don't post hyperlinks. I think everyone kind of knows that, because before you know it, there's all kinds of nasty hyperlinks. And I'm not in any competition with any other channel or anything like that, but I don't want my viewers being tricked, my chat members or subscribers being tricked into going to Bitcoin sites or, pornographic sites or any of that kind of stuff, and you just can't tell with a hyperlink. So since you can't tell, you can't really trust them. And I don't want anybody trying to sell Bitcoin or altcoin or any of that nonsense in the chat either. So no hyperlinks. And yeah, just conduct yourself as a rational, calm adult, and you will be just fine here. Rational, calm, free thinking, original thinking adult. And hint in 3, that goes back to the soapboxing and street preaching. I don't care if you do want to reference, if you're talking with someone in chat. I'll probably miss most of these anyway because I'm trying to focus on what I'm trying to convey to you. But still, in the Wild West chat box, mosh pit, if you want to reference something that's in a widely available text, and it doesn't matter if it's Einstein, the King James Bible, the Quran, I don't know, One Piece. Don't ask me how I know about that. Yeah, I know about it because, well, I'll give away some OPSEC, but yeah, the anime, long-running show, One Piece. If you want to quote something like that, use, the episode or the title, the page, the paragraph, or the verse number. If you just have to, you just got no other arrow left in your quiver, and you have to make that fallacy mistake, if you are going to use it, just quote it that way. And I'm sure the other party, if, will probably need some clarification, and just try and clarify it, but, Or Prepper 1, what are you begging for? Please what? Please don't be conservative or give into being. Please be yourself. Yeah, be yourself. Yeah, be yourself. And if you're conservative, that's fine. If you're liberal, that's fine. If you're independent, that's fine. If you're green or environmentalist, that's fine. But make the argument, make the case for why you believe what you believe. And don't get all salty and bent out of shape if a great number of people don't buy it. Please be firm in your beliefs here and argue your case as civilly and respectfully as you can. I've seen other channels and, you know, watched other lives and stuff like that. And I'm not saying many are like this, but I've seen other channels out there, none that I've moderated for in the past, of course, that there'll be this whole big block of moderators just waiting for you to make some kind of small error, whether it be a factual error or a rule break or something like that, and just smoke you immediately. Poof, you're gone. And I've never understood that can't help with channels. If you're trying to build a community, a virtual community around a channel, I don't see how that helps anything. I really don't. You know, I mean, we're all human. We can all make little mistakes. It's how we react to it that matters. All right. Well, it is 10:35 Central Time. I will say one more thing, since we're kind of on behavior and conducting ourselves in here and stuff like that. I will give you guys a little insight on how I view politics. Some of you are going to love it. Some of you are going to hate it. Some of you are going to unsubscribe right now and never come back. Oh my God. How could you say such things? Here's how I view politics. Oh, Prepper 1. Yeah. So, well, Prepper 1 has picked a fight with yours truly. No, I'm kidding. What you're doing, I think I am standing out on my own just by the last 10 minutes if you've been listening. I'm associated with another channel with many of you. That's the other channel. What you're doing there is you're not extending me the benefit of the doubt. And I understand what you're asking for, I do. But the mistake you're making is you're not giving me the benefit of the doubt, and you're applying guilt by association. I know the other channel creator very well. We talk privately, off stream, very often. And he's a good guy. He means well. And he does provide a lot of good breaking news. And that's the game he's in. But this is my own channel. Please don't. I'm not going to ban you. The last thing I'm going to do to anyone is ban anyone. But anyway, I think you get what I'm saying. I think you're picking up what I'm putting down. Is that this is my channel. It'll be my rules. Very few rules for you, because I want it to be open. I want it to be as close to an open-minded, free expression area as I can. And that's not going to attract everybody. I know that's going to limit me in some ways. If I attract a niche, like other channels like to do, then I know I would have a huge surge in that niche. But I don't want that. I want this to be a place where people are brave enough to put how they feel, what they think, what they believe, honestly and openly in the chat, and stand behind it. So that's my hopes for this channel, and my hopes for all of you, is that this community can be that way. Yeah, I'm not into banning, and I urge you guys, also, guys and gals, in the chat, don't ban each other. Make the mental fight. amongst yourselves. Not fight, you know what I'm saying. Debate. Debate amongst yourselves. And I debated myself, not to overuse the word, on mentioning snowflaking in the chat rules in that graphic. I might still add it. Or maybe it's in there, I don't know. Let me look. And then I'll tell you I will give you the insider, no Patreon account or donation or super chat needed insight into Soil's political views. No, I didn't mention it. So snowflaking, I don't know. I don't even know if it's the correct term. I think everyone knows what a snowflake is. And before I forget, while the thought flashes across the pan of my mind, the community is open on the channel. You can go at any time and comment under videos, I think, well, put it this way, the community is on in the YouTube channel, in Soil Radio Operator channel at any time. You can go in there and debate each other and pick fights and play around and horseplay mentally and all that stuff all you want. So I did want to mention that. But snowflaking. Snowflaking is when you want to, for lack of a better word, you can't make an argument and your feelings are hurt. And you can't formulate or you can't put forth a good defense when someone is disagreeing with you. So what you do instead is you melt and you try and create a black hole of snowflake and pull in all kinds of sympathy and claim you're getting bullied. You can't be bullied in a virtual space. I know that goes against the grain of a lot of current thought, but you can't be bullied in a space where you can close a laptop or hit the little red button and turn on and off the device and make your bully disappear into the ether and go do something else. So that also won't work here. If you email the channel or message me on the channel and say so-and-so bullied me and I felt bad, that doesn't work. Sorry. Not sorry, actually. Sorry, not sorry. Or Prepper, you did not offend me. Breathe easy, my friend. Big breath in. And slowly let it out while you count to 10. You're okay. We're cool. It's all good. Yeah, so snowflaking, where someone says something you don't like, you don't know how to come back to it, you're offended by it. Doesn't matter. Being offended, as the late Christopher Hitchens once remarked, isn't a point. It doesn't make any point. Simply saying, I'm offended, to a statement presented to you takes you nowhere. So he still, I think he famously said during one of his community forums was, I'm still waiting for you to make the point. Being offended doesn't count for anything in the discussion of ideas or how you feel about a certain thing. So expect to be challenged here. That's one of my hopes for the community. Expect to be made uncomfortable mentally. Guard your privacy, because if the channel does grow in the future, which I would imagine it would grow a little bit, there's probably going to be some wackos in here that are going to have to be dealt with. So, yeah, guard your privacy. Don't give away too much of your OPSEC, and you shouldn't do that even in a place you feel 100% confident, because if you feel 100% confident and safe in a virtual space, it's probably a trap. They probably got you right where they want you. So be careful about that. Don't give out your address. If you live in like well, I could spend all night giving you guys advice that most of you know already, but if you live in a populous city, a populous metro area, yeah, you could probably give away your city. If you live in a rural area, I wouldn't go any further than your county. And like, you can take it from me, it's in the channel name, it's in my quote-unquote name that I give out to you guys. I only dial it down to a region, Southern Illinois, and that region means different places to different people, but it's a generalized region. You know where in the U.S., in the great United States that I'm coming from when I say Southern Illinois. Most of you can paint that picture. But I wouldn't go, any lower than that, especially in a rural area. Don't go any lower than your county. Same reason many of you know, and with radio operator in the name, I'm probably boring most of you to tears here. So let there be a great cry out in the chat to move the F on from this boring stuff about U-soil. In the chat if I'm boring too many of you, but radio operator's part of that, but it's not my identity. I am a licensed amateur radio operator. I hold a general class ticket, but I am a bad ham. And what do I mean by that? I'm a bad ham. I am just as more than likely to pirate and teach a non-ham how all the inside secrets and scoops and techniques on how to operate a radio station. I don't care if you have a ticket or not. I'll teach you whatever you want to know. I happen to have a ticket for quite a few years, but many of you will never know my call sign because that would be an OPSEC violation for me. If I gave out my actual FCC assigned call sign, you would know my exact address. So if you are a radio operator and you want to have a virtual presence online, I know a lot of guys don't because they wrap up their call sign. There's YouTube channels that are just their call sign. And excuse me, about knocked off my headphones. You could, like I could change it to a post office box, but still, that would be too close for comfort. For any wackadoodles that might be out there in virtual land that want to come into IRL land and bother me. And so, guard your call sign too. But I'm a bad ham because I will teach anybody that wants to know about radio, about HF, VHF, all that stuff. And yeah, I'm just as likely to pirate too. I've jailbroke or Mars modded, depending on your level of expertise and understanding, all my radios. I can do all the naughty things with them. Doesn't bother me one bit. I am responsible, and I don't interfere with, critical first responder communications and military communications and stuff. Although I kind of take that back. There was one time, one night I was kind of experimenting with some satellite stuff, and I might have kind of sort of accidentally sent a nonsensical digital signal into the rough vicinity of another country's satellite by accident, not on purpose, kind of, sort of, just for shits and gigs. But we won't talk about that. That'll be a story for maybe another time. Maybe I'll make that like a Patreon thing or something. I don't know. All right, what you all been waiting for? Soil's political composition. Probably not really. You're probably all like, yeah, Sherry's going to sleep. I'm boring her too much, and she was number 3. She's like, I'm out of here, this clown. So real quick, and I'll probably expand on this another night, maybe if it's a topic in chat or something, but I view the labels, the parties, identities. I'm very cautious with people, or let's see, what's the best way to put this? I view the labels people wrap into or assign themselves and wrap into their identity. The labels that people assign themselves and wrap into their identity. In modern American culture and political discourse and political identity, civil discourse, those are mind filters. Mind filters, mind sieves, aka mind traps. What labels you put on yourself in American society advertise your identity to others by design. So when you say you are an American, conservative, Christian, pickleball player, you're letting everyone know you're an American, first and foremost. Great. You're Christian in there. Great. You have a certain set of political beliefs associated with this label, this box here, as part of your identity. And political parties are made up of platforms. And each platform has a plank. And each plank is an idea, or maybe set of ideas. So if you're following so far, depending on which box you're going to talk about, is wrapped up in your identity. So when you need to, and where this becomes a problem, and why I don't assign any label to myself other than independent and free thinking, because I think our nation would be better off if everyone was independent and free thinking and not enamored to or shaped by or have to claim a particular party. But each platform is made up of planks, and each plank is a set of ideas. So when you lay out the conservative or liberal or environmentalist or whatever political box, and you slide that out to someone as part of your identity, yes, it makes it easier to relay how you feel about things in the political or civil discourse space, but there's a whole big box of planks there that make up that platform. And you as an individual, I think a lot of people haven't thought it through that not every piece of the decking do you agree with, morally or ethically or a number of different things. But you're trapped in that box. So it's a mind filter trap, a mind sieve. And the other danger with wrapping your identity up into a pre-packaged political ideology is now it's you. So when someone comes along and starts to poke holes in it, pick it apart, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, this is a marginal idea, now it's not ideas you're talking about anymore, but now you personally are attacked. Now you personally are insulted because it's no longer a set of ideas that a political party have, it's you. And people respond as you see, as our current set of political discourse is, which is not good, in my humble opinion. So, yeah, and I'm not saying that as a cop-out, truly. I'm telling you all truly, everyone that can hear my voice right now, if I could push a button and replace our current crop of 453 or whatever the number is, who knows? It's not truly that number because of lobbyists, but whatever the number, both Senate, all state houses, if it was a magic button, everyone that's currently in there would be completely cleared out, back to their communities, and not be allowed to run or hold the office of dog catcher. And magically, the same button would take everyone from those representative areas, those districts, those states, those counties, every single person who absolutely does not want the job, but yet is a good person, an ethical, honest businessman, a hardworking farmer, a former soldier that's now, a veteran working at Home Depot. Every single good person in that district or county or congressional district or whatever, excuse me, would magically be forced to now become our people's representatives. Because I would trust a grain farmer from Nebraska to better represent me in the U.S. Senate than any single senator that's in there now. I would trust a crab fisherman, rando crab fisherman in Massachusetts, to represent me, an American citizen, better than who's in there now. I would wager that someone that has a surfboard shop on the California coast would do a better job at representing me and my nation and our interests better than who's in there now. Someone that is working at a Home Depot in Arizona or New Mexico was a veteran, and not a badass veteran, not an operator, not a special forces facial hair goatee operator. A cook would do fine because his job was just as important. A veteran that worked in the DFAC as a cook would represent me better than who's in there now. But the trick is, and why it never works and why it's magic, unfortunately, is it goes back to, and I don't remember which founder it was. Well, George Washington was the embodiment of it, because all he wanted to do was return to Mount Vernon and farm, if you guys remember that story. But it's the people that don't want it that should be in there to serve. Because everyone that wants it and wants it bad, it's going to get the money, going to get the influence, and then they're going to go on the speaking circuit afterward, then they're going to be on the board of whatever afterward. It's the last people you want in there. And it is, as you see, goes back to the clip that I played of Eisenhower speaking his farewell address. He warned against so much of this stuff, not in any certain words, it was more industrial complex, but same idea. You never want influence of that nature falling into the hands of scientific elite, business elite, military industrialists, elites, whatever elites, technological elite. He even warned about that. Think about how how forward-thinking that statement was. A scientific technological elite. He warned about that, just the same as the military-industrial elite. Excuse me. And what do we have now? Palantir. Anyway, I'm gonna get way deeper and in way too much trouble for only having a handful of videos on the channel if I keep going. So you see what you all did? No, I don't want to. That's exactly what. No, Ridge Runner. No, I do not want to be president. But see, that's the catch-22, isn't it? No, I don't want it. I'm not. I don't have a face for primetime debate anyway, and I don't look good in a red or blue tie. So, and there's other things I wouldn't do that you have to do. So it'd be too much, too quick, too shocking, too jolting. It's why this, the swamp was never really drained. Now it's a literal thing. I think there's how many hundreds of thousands or millions of raw sewage in the Potomac. So it was supposed to drain the swamp, but instead we added a whole bunch of fertilizer to it. And that's not anything against T-Man or Kamala. It's just the area. It's just those types of people. So you want, in my view, you want people that don't want the office, but will take the responsibility of the office as their duty as an American citizen to fulfill their civic duty to their fellow citizens. But does 500 of such a specimen even, I'm sure it exists, I don't know how you'd make it happen. Yeah, so I'm neither left nor right, conservative or liberal. Evaluate each piece and listen to the words people tell you, the promises they tell you, and then later on, after you've given them the benefit of the doubt and you've given them some power, especially as a politician over yourself, judge them by their actions. Because it's a tale as old as time. A politician can promise you everything, hand out lollipops or steal lollipops and kiss babies and all that good stuff. And if you end up carrying water for them, they will embarrass you thoroughly, and they will disappoint you thoroughly. Doesn't matter if they wear a red tie, blue tie, purple tie, green and red striped tie. Doesn't matter. Not seeing the whole picture by design. So that's where I stand. Should you be that way? I'm not telling you to be that way. If you want to identify as a conservative, great, but don't expect not to be challenged here. If you want to identify as a liberal, great, but don't expect not to be challenged here. My hope is you're not challenged in the brain dead, bumper sticker, empty thought way, but in a genuine way. And it'll take some time. Everybody will find their footing. It's the Wild West. But I hope to introduce more civility. As that line in, what was it, Civil War on Netflix? The guy was scratching his beard, yeah, but what American are you? That's what I'm talking about. It's a tribalism that's affected us and poisoned our mind. It's a form of tribalism. And that's been around forever, but it's effectively waged by those that want to control you. That's what's so frustrating to me anyway, is I easily see it. you lay out all these mind traps. It's a mind field. It's a mind filter trap. And people step all over it without a thought and get caught in it. I was having a conversation with someone I love very dearly not too long ago. Let me back up. I'll tell you, I'm an American, and I am a husband, and I am a father. And those are my labels. That's as far as it goes with me. But I was trying to explain tribalism, not necessarily in a political discourse, but in its true form. Tribalism that's been around since the dawn of man, and in ancient peoples have suffered by it, and it's made us backwards in many ways. And the best example I could think of for this little person that I love very much, and I'm trying very hard to help form a young mind in the right way without my own failures and traps, but just to help foster a free and open young mind coming up in the world. We had watched a movie a long time ago, but it was 1962, Lawrence of Arabia. Some of you are old enough to remember that. Some of you have no idea. If you've never seen it, you should watch it. Not only is it an old classic, but it's an incredible expose on many ideas, one of them being the dangers of long-established tribalism. And flash forward to a modern film, the Civil War on Netflix, where that soldier's scratching his beard and holding an AR-15 and asking, yeah, but what kind of American are you? That's where we're at. That's what kind of American are you? Are you this or that or the other? And then I think of Lawrence of Arabia, and I think of the well scene that introduces the character, the Sharif, Ali Sharif. And Lawrence's desert with his guide, who is of another tribe, and they're crossing the desert and they come upon a well, and they drink from the well. And the Sharif, naturally, slowly and painfully, you see a camel, a black silhouette, mirage almost, in the far distance, out of the desert heat and the desert landscape. And as it gets closer and closer, the guide that was with Lawrence suddenly became fearful and went for a pistol that Lawrence had given him. And Lawrence's guide, you have to forgive me, I don't remember his name from the movie or what his tribe was. I want to say Hadith. I could have that wrong. But anyway, long story short, he aims the pistol, and as he's aiming the pistol, the Sharif shoots him dead with a rifle. And as the scene unfolds, Sharif and Lawrence have a dialogue basically with a man that he had just murdered for drinking from his tribe's well, and he was not of that tribe, laying dead in the sand. And he begins to have a dialogue with Lawrence about the handgun that was on the ground. Was it his or was it Lawrence's? And it was his. the other tribesmen, so he takes it, puts it in his belt, and then he sees a cup, a little cheap British-issued tin cup sitting on a rock by the well, and asks whose it is. And that struck me. Tribalism is so absurd that you shoot a man dead for drinking from a well, yet you're worried about the small trinkets on the ground and who they belong to, so you don't offend. It's just ridiculous to me. But the scene, and I've rambled on long enough, the scene pretty much ends with the lesson, and that is what Lawrence shouts or yells to the sheriff in anger. And the words from that movie has always stuck with me, no matter how long ago I've seen it. But the person I care very deeply about has seen this now also, but I brought it back around to her attention. And he cries out and he says, Sharif Ali, so long as the Arabs remain a tribal people, so long as the Arabs, I'll get this right, so long as the Arabs fight tribe against tribe, they will be a little people, they will be a silly people. Greedy, barbarous, and cruel, as you are. And that's true. We should have community, but we don't need to be tribal with each other, because it just leads to dark places. Well, with that, crew, I've rambled on long enough. I hope many of you now know me a little bit better, and you kind of get a feeling for some of the presentations I'm going to make. I hope you enjoyed the information tonight. We can dive deeper into the weeds with technical details as the time gets closer, or so as your attention span warrants. But we can go many directions together on lives. And I hope we have a good time. I hope we get to know one another better, and we can be free and open with each other. And I want to thank you very much for being here. This is only my second official live stream. And technical errors notwithstanding, looks like it kept on trucking. So that's good. So I'm going to leave the live up for a little while, let you guys talk amongst each other, but eventually it's going to get closed down because many of you have a much more well-worn home that you can go to hang out. But I will leave it up for a little while, as long as my connection stays strong. I'll play some music, YouTube-approved tunes, so it doesn't get too crazy. And I'll kind of read through the chat, and I'll try and, shape this channel a little bit toward the feedback that I get. So don't be afraid to let me know what you thought of the presentation. Let me know if the subject matter was too generalized. If you do want to go down into really deep, dark rabbit holes, we can certainly do that, and we'll do that in the future, don't worry. I am off to do that as it is. I've tried really hard with my dialogue tonight and my speech tonight to actually not get pulled into the weeds by you guys. There was several times I had to put my hand over the chat because I knew I would desperately want to start talking questions. But tonight I had a couple goals in mind. One was to warn you about what's going on and how close we are and the danger of it, which I did earlier. And the other, so you kind of get a feel for me and a feel for the channel. So hopefully I've accomplished those objectives tonight, but do not be afraid, crew, to leave me your most honest and raw feedback. I guarantee you will not hurt my feelings. You'll only improve what I can do for you. It's welcomed. Don't be afraid to hurt my feelings. You are not going to melt. You're not going to melt me. I can take it. So if it sucked, let me know. If you enjoyed it, let me know. Whether I'll change, like, oh, the volume wasn't quite right, or I don't like when you talk in those weird voices. I like the deep, regular soil voice. That's too bad. I'm going to do that stuff without any prompting and without feedback. That's just me. So if the volume wasn't right or it buffered, things that are in my control, I will try and improve for you and for me. But overall, if this is your first sit through the long live stream, going almost 3 hours here, less than about 7 minutes shy of 3 hours, welcome to the channel. I hope you enjoy it here. I hope you enjoy the company here, and don't worry about behaving or not behaving, Ridge. You just be yourself, buddy. Everybody just be themselves. You can talk freely and openly here. This is a genuine, original flavor, First Amendment area, and I will keep it that way as long as I possibly can. So, with that, be good to each other, crew. Have a great night. There'll be lots to talk about in the future. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.